So good day and welcome to this interview for the 15th annual session of the Global Energy Parliament. We have an expert testimony today to better understand the links between what we eat and the effects on our brains. I am very pleased to welcome Professor Andre Loy, a global pioneer in regenerative agriculture. Professor Loy holds a doctorate of science and is the international director of Regenerative International, which has over 700 partners in 82 countries. He's written 2 books on pesticides, numerous chapters in scientific books about pesticides, and other books and articles on regenerative agriculture. He owns and manages an organic fruit farm in North Queensland, Australia, with his wife Julia. Very warm welcome to you, Professor Andre Loy.
Thank you.
To conduct today's interview, we have GEP Minister of Environment, Lady Carla Davis, who works with Professor Loy at her university, the South Seas University. Lady Davis is a nutritionist, author, and a founding member of the GEP. Welcome, Lady Carla.
Welcome. Thank you, Mira.
We're most pleased to have both of you here today. And Lady Davis, I will hand it over to you now. Thank you so much.
Well, I would like to especially welcome Professor Andre Loy to the 2025 Global Energy Parliament. And I'd like you to show us, I believe you have some slides on how pesticides, herbicides, and other toxic agriculture chemicals impact our environment and affect food nutrients. Go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lady Carla. And I just want to say thank you for having me. And I'm speaking to you from my regenerative organic tropical fruit farm in Australia. And I'm someone who does produce tons of high quality food without pesticides. But what I want to do is show you why I don't use pesticides. As Lady Carla and Mira have said, I'm an expert in this area, and I have some slides to show the effect of what small amounts of pesticides do to our bodies. Now, this slide shows what happens after a lifetime of the small amounts of a pesticide called Roundup, one of the most common, at levels that most people are exposed to. And this was the first credible, independent, peer-reviewed study that looked at a formulated pesticide. Most formulated pesticides aren't studied for long-term toxicity. And what they found is that pretty well all the treated animals had mammary and other tumors. For instance, all the female animals had mammary tumors. Mammary tumors, the common word for that is breast cancer, except for one that died of ovarian tumors. They found damage to all the other tissues of the body as well. So this is an example here. This is a normal liver, healthy one. And what they found, it was Roundup, but not just Roundup, also genetically modified corn as well. And whether they had the GMO and Roundup or Roundup, what you can see here, these are called lesions. This is damage, tissue damage. This is a healthy kidney. Here you can see the damage by the GMO plus Roundup or Roundup. Similarly with a healthy liver, and here we can see the actual damage. And this has come from the equivalent of the amount of Roundup that most people get in normally produced industrial food. I think the other really important issue that we're finding now is this increase in cancers, and particularly within children And what the research shows that 80% of cancers are actually caused by environmental toxins, especially chemicals and pesticides, not by genes. And we have more and more research showing that these environmental exposures are the cause. For instance, we know that leukemia rates are consistently elevated amongst children who grow up on farms. And we can see this rate of childhood cancers is increasing. This is a scientific study, a peer-reviewed study that I was one of the co-authors. And what we looked at was the increase in actually is 26 diseases in the United States. I've just picked thyroid cancer as an example. And we correlated the increase in these diseases with the increase in the use of Roundup. That's the red line. The blue line is the increase in the use of genetically modified organisms, the GMO-resistant crops, because the increase in this is because they're using more Roundup to spray on these crops to control weeds. And what we see is about the time they've introduced these crops, the amount of diseases, the yellow bars here is the increase in thyroid cancer. Here you can see it's going up and down. And what the green bar is what we call the trend line. This is what it would have done before the increase in the use of Roundup and GMOs. And we can see it tracks. And what we've done here is we use a very important statistical tool to analyze the probability that this is not an accident. And it comes up, it's actually 1 in 10,000 that this is not an accident, that this causes this. The latest study that's come out, and that's published this year, and that's the second long-term. In fact, it's even longer because they started feeding the mothers small amounts of Roundup and other glyphosate-based herbicides before the children were born. So they're saying, what happens if a mother eats these foods, the children are born, then they have these small amounts. And what they found is that the levels 4 times lower than the United States EPA safe level cause numerous cancers: leukemia, skin, liver, thyroid, nervous system, ovary, breast, adrenal, kidney, urinary, bladder, bone, endocrine, pancreas, uterus, and spleen. In other words, it confirmed the 2 earlier studies I've shown you, that the smallest amounts of this chemical will cause these problems. What I also want to show you is that we actually have numerous studies that if we eat organic food where it's not used, we can actually get rid of that from children within days. Here, this study shows that you start eating, getting children on organic food, regenerative organic food, the reduction reaches a safe baseline within 3 days. It's that quick. What we're also seeing now around the world is this increase in autism. And there's a whole range of causes. But one of them I want to show you once again is glyphosate. This is this same study we did, and we showed how, glyphosate, Roundup, it tracks perfectly with the increase of autism in the United States. And once again, with this statistical tool, it's called a Pearson's correlation coefficient, we show that the probability of these being an accident is 1 in 10,000. If this was a drug and it had this level of probability of symptoms, it would be taken off the markets. But because it's a pesticide, they don't bother about it and they just ignore it. But I just want to show that, this probability shows that it isn't an accident. But not long after we published it, another lot of peer-reviewed science came out actually showing exactly how these small amounts of glyphosate cause autism. Our brain is our biggest collection of nerves. Now, what happens is that small amounts of glyphosate stop the developing the nerves from developing. So in the brains of children who are getting these small amounts, when the first division of a nerve should look like this. This is called the dendrites. This is the axon. It looks like a lightning bolt. And here, you can't see an axon. Second division, it's getting an axon. But compare that to the normal one, what it should normally look like. It hasn't got all these different, basically, branches. And these branches are important because this is where they join with other nerve cells when you make the neural network called our brain. You get to the fourth division here, the mature one, and you can see that there's all these branches. It's complex. You can join and make all these networks that are so important in developing intelligence and motor skills and everything that we need. This one here is completely underdeveloped. And this is what we are doing to our children by having these small amounts of this and other pesticides in our food. But it's not just glyphosate. There's many of the pesticides are what we call neurotoxins. They're nerve poisons, and they damage the normal development of nerve cells. So this is a group called organophosphates. They were actually developed by the Nazis as nerve poisons for warfare. And after World War II, they got modified, as pesticides. And what this study found is that mothers who thought they're having a good diet in the USA, eating normal fresh fruit and vegetables, were getting small amounts of these pesticides. And what it showed is damage to these regions of the brain. The mothers have thought they're doing the right thing. They didn't get any symptoms of poisoning, but these small amounts stop the normal development of nerves. This is brain damage that these children have to live with. That one, it was done a decade or so ago. This is the one published, another one published this year. And all these areas here are damage to the brain from small amounts of pesticides. In this case, it's chlorpyrifos, but the whole range of these widely used pesticides do this at the smallest amount and are causing brain damage and all these behavioral problems in our children who are eating industrially grown food that uses pesticides. The good news is this, is that we have very, very good science that if we feed children diets from organic food and regenerative organic foods, very quickly we can get the levels to decrease to undetectable. And here they're saying immediately. It's actually within hours. Their bodies can start excreting it, and we can start bringing these children back to normal. But most importantly, we can prevent it by making sure that mothers and their children, particularly women who want to have children, eat food that does not have these pesticides. And so basically, for us, the key here is why we do regenerative agriculture, because the whole purpose of this is to develop a food system that we can get high yields of really, really healthy food. And Carla, because you've been involved in helping us run the courses and training people all over the world on regenerative agriculture.
Yes, so Professor Andre, this is really startling statistics, and it's pretty shocking. A picture speaks 1,000 words, and I thank you for this. And I would like to ask you, how can regenerative agriculture solve this problem? Could you elaborate on that a little bit more for us, please?
Yeah, I'd be very pleased to do that, because that's why we put so much effort into scaling it up. Why we're actually very pleased that it's taking off all around the world quickly. So first, I just want to start with a definition. There's a lot of definitions out there, and most of them are what we call equivalent to ours, but we are actually the people who started the whole international regenerative movement 10 years ago, when we formed Regeneration International. So ours is actually the first definition, the one that, and we'll still say it's the primary one. And so what we say is regenerative systems. And we want to talk about the big picture. Some people just talk about soil and nothing else. We're talking the big picture of a connected planet and a connected humanity and cultures. So regenerative systems improve the environment, soil, plants, animal welfare, health, and communities. The opposite of regenerative is degenerative. And this is an essential distinction in determining practices that are not regenerative. Agricultural systems that use degenerative practices and inputs that damage the environment, soil health, genes, and communities, and involve animal cruelty are not regenerative. So we will say that examples of this are synthetic toxic pesticides, synthetic water-soluble fertilizers, genetically modified organisms, confined animal feeding operations, overgrazing, exploitive marketing and wage systems, destructive tillage systems, clearing high-value ecosystems. These are examples of degenerative practices. And we are very strong on saying such systems should be called degenerative agriculture to stop greenwashing and hijacking. So let's break it down as to what we are doing with regenerative agriculture and why it's different from industrial agriculture or degenerative agriculture. And what we're doing is working with nature and one of the most powerful forces in nature, the sun. Because what happens here is that plants use solar energy. They combine carbon dioxide, which is the main greenhouse gas, and water. And through photosynthesis, they produce glucose. And glucose is the molecule of life. It's the basis of nearly every living molecule. In fact, 95 to 98% of a plant's biomass, its body, is actually made from glucose. For instance, cellulose, which is wood, leaves, it is long chains of glucose and water. All our carbohydrates are made from glucose. All the various sugars we have are made from glucose. Our hydrocarbons, our oils and fats, are made from glucose. Our proteins and amino acids are made from glucose with a bit of nitrogen added. So it is the fundamental building block of life, and it happens through this process of photosynthesis. Very importantly is that between 10 to 40% of these compounds, the plants take down and through their roots, and they feed it to the soil to feed the soil microbiome, the area where most of the life on the planet is. And we have different names for that, such as the liquid carbon pathway or carbon gift. This is an example of it. You can see these exudates. And the area around here where these exudates are from the root tip is called the rhizosphere. And what it's doing, it's feeding all these microorganisms. It's deliberately feeding them. And it's the area of the highest biodiversity on the planet. A teaspoon of soil from the root tips has billions of living organisms. And by doing this, these microorganisms, they build soil. What you can see here is this is soil being built. And these we call PEDs. And the aggregates, this is what we call a good quality soil. Here we can see the beneficial fungi. And, you know, what they're doing here is feeding their host. And I'll explain more about it. But what we're seeing around the root is the rhizosphere, but we're seeing how soil is built and what these organisms are doing when they're building it. They're releasing the minerals that their host plant needs. So this is an example of the difference between two types of soil. And this is a soil that's been built by the rhizosphere. See the dark color? That's the carbon dioxide, the carbon from it, all those carbon compounds. And you can see the PEDs, that crumbly structure. That's what we want. That here, the soil is compacted. It's a light color. It doesn't have the all the molecules of life. It's smeared. What happens when it rains? This will suck up all the water. Here it runs off and they lose most of it. And I just want to say that's my place. I did that. And if I go over the fence, that's my next door neighbour's place when it was a sugarcane paddock. Same soil, different management. This soil is biologically dead because of all the poisons. Things like Roundup or kill the life. This soil is full of all the beneficial compounds. And what is very important about this is that these compounds feed beneficial organisms that help their host plants. So this picture is very important to explain what's going on. This is a little fir tree. It's photosynthesizing. It's making all these glucose compounds, and it's taking it down. And these areas here, it's feeding to a beneficial fungi. We call these endophytes. It's not a parasite. A parasite steals. An endophyte trades. So it's in the dark. It can't photosynthesize. It can't make glucose. So this plant is giving this fungi glucose. In return, these threads are called mycelium. It brings it right down deep into the soil, and it's getting water, it's getting phosphorus and all these nutrients for its host plant, and it's feeding its host plant. And it knows the more it feeds its host plant, the bigger it gets, the more glucose it makes, the more it gets, the more it grows, the deeper it gets, the more it feeds its host plant. And the word we have for this is synergy. And I want to get rid of this Darwinian notion that everything in nature is survival of the fittest and competition. That, anybody who's observed nature knows it doesn't work that way. The longer you leave an ecosystem, the more diverse it gets. If the Darwinian theory is right, the longer you leave it, competition of the fittest, in the end, there's only one species, the fittest. Nature, while there is competition, in most cases, it's symbiosis. all the species work together to make a greater whole. They help each other, and by doing it, that they all benefit, and that's what's happening here. And this is the farming system that we want. We're not killing things. We're enhancing. We're using it to our benefit. And this is one of the ways we can use it to our benefit. We don't need to kill weeds. We need to get rid of this reductionist war with nature attitude that we have in farming and across the board, where we're destroying, the very, very basis of what sustains us. And where industrial agriculture's got it wrong, it's all about using synthetic chemicals to feed the roots. But plants, it's the other way around. Plants feed their roots from their leaves. The photosynthesis here makes most of the compounds to feed the roots. Only 5% or less of all these nutrients come from the soil. They're still important, very important, and when we do the course, we teach the importance of getting the balance right with the 5%. Don't get me wrong. But the big problem is that in agriculture, they've left out 95%, which is this. So instead of killing everything, poisoning it, ploughing it up, if we want to stop competition, we just cut the leaves. Here, if you cut the leaves right down, and it has to shed its roots because it doesn't have enough food. It's not making enough food to feed its roots. It can't starve all its roots. It just needs to keep some. Eventually, as they grow and the leaves grow, it will recover. But by doing that, and it sheds all its roots, all those nutrients will get released to our cash crop. And so this is an example of how this system works. We call it pasture cropping. Instead of spraying out and ploughing out all the pasture as weeds, here it gets grazed down, put sheep on it, graze it really short. As I showed you in the picture, if you graze it short, the roots get shed, then plants the seeds in it, and at the right time, in this case, spring, and annuals always grow up in perennials. It grows up and you harvest it. Now, this farmer gets the same yield as his neighbours at a fraction of the cost. He's spending nothing on ploughing up, spraying up, all the diesel and everything that's used, nothing on fertilizers, by using the microorganisms to build the fertility. He gets the same yield. Actually, he gets twice the yield, because what he has under here, after he's taken the grain off, he puts his sheep back on. So he gets 2 crops, double income. Very importantly, what we're talking about is building up of fertility. Where this picture is really important is that this was originally the same field. 2 brothers inherited it from their father. One continued to farm, traditionally, as they always did it. The other farmer was the one who started pasture cropping. And you can see the lovely dark color, all the carbon, all the molecules of life are going in. You see the beautiful crumb structure, the ped structure. Here it's all sheared, there's no carbon. But really importantly is this. In 10 years, what he did, he increased his soil nutrients, 177% for calcium, magnesium 38%, potassium 46%, and so on. He didn't buy it. He didn't spend a cent on fertilizers. This is what the biology does when you feed it. And so here's a commercial farmer taking off 2 commercial crops and improved his soil. It's, so this is the basis of what we're doing. This is an example of rice using the same system. In this case, The fields is using red clover. Found it's very good in suppressing rice weeds, but he grazes the field right down with sheep. You can see the sheep are there. He goes on and he's planting his rice here. He doesn't need big tractors. He was unfortunately passed away last year. But Peter was Australia's largest organic rice grower and made very good money with this system. He didn't have to buy big tractors, little tractors. He's hardly using any energy. It's just quick, simple. He's even keeping the sheep, and while he's planting, he'll take them off onto other parts of the farm when the rice is coming up. But I just want to show you how simple it is. This is Wisconsin, and this is ryegrass that they regard as one of the worst weeds. It's growing onions. Same thing, it just uses a lawnmower. It's just mowed it right down with a little hand side throw lawnmower. Just cut strips in, planted the onions, and then, every week just goes along the side with the lawnmower and cuts the ryegrass, throws it in as a mulch, goes down the other side, and it's turned one of the worst weeds. It's actually feeding the onions. Very little labour, very easy to maintain, and using no poisons and building up the fertility. The other really important one here is when we build up the fertility, and particularly the organic matter, we know we have higher yields in climate extremes. And today I haven't got time to go into detail about that. I just want to show you some of the studies. We have heaps of studies. This is probably the most important of the studies. It's a 40-year long-term scientific trial done by the Rodale Institute. This section here they call it regenerative organic, and this is the standard industrial conventional corn. It's a drought. Now, because they've built up the soil, it's much better at capturing and storing moisture. And what they found is that in the drought years, the regenerative organic gets around 30% higher yields than industrial. This is the same soil, the same corn. The difference is this has been managed best practice by the agronomists at the local university. This has been managed by the local regenerative organic farmers. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist to see which one of these gives the better outcomes. Very importantly about this study now, it's actually over 40 years, but 2 years ago they published their 40-year results, and now this system is consistently getting higher yields. No poisons, no artificial fertilizers, and much lower costs. And really importantly, as we're going into more extreme climates, this is our future. This is resilient. So what I'll do is I'll just leave it on this and just go back to Lady Carla, and we can just talk a little bit about why, the difference that these systems make.
Well, I think you've said it all and you've shown it all. What an amazing display of the effects of regenerative agriculture and how it can solve the problems. I can't thank you enough for your presentation today. Thank you so much. You have so much knowledge, and I'm glad that we were able to share it with our Global Energy Parliament members today. Thank you, Professor Loy. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, and I really hope you have a wonderful session and keep up your good work. We need more groups like you on the planet doing what you're doing, so I'll thank you as well.
Thank you.